It's like consulting an encyclopedia of weird, crazy stuff. And,
I have a ton of those.
And I have a pretty good memory for things I'm interested in, but I can't remember everything, which is why you have to take notes and you have to write it down. And then usually if you write about something, it makes it a lot easier to remember. And in fact, one of the reasons why I can speak so lucidly about this thing with the dinosaurs and the vortexes is that I lectured on it in detail in the last 2 conferences I gave.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very fresh in my mind right now.
Right. Do you have anything to say about Iran or Obama?
Oh, absolutely.
Or anything?
In fact, I'm doing another show with Carrie tomorrow, Project Camelot Radio, and we're probably going to focus on that through most of the show.
Okay, so why don't we leave?
But I'm happy to go into it again here. At least give an overview of stuff we can talk about more on that show. But now I do get to claim some I told you so points here, and I'm not going to rub anybody's face in it, but I did say on my blog, the second to last article that I wrote, that Obama's speech to the Muslim world, which consists of about 1.5 billion people on the planet, which he did in Cairo not too long ago, would be the equivalent for the Muslim world of what Woodstock in 1969 was for people in the U.S. and abroad. Now, you have to understand that when you're dealing with any type of social gathering in which large numbers of people focus their mind on something that's very positive, that you get substantial effects that result from that, which are energetic in nature and which affect the mind of every person on Earth and affect the emotional body. We've talked about this before. It comes out of transcendental meditation. They call it the Maharishi effect. And what they found was in transcendental meditation, they'd have these gatherings of people in which, in some cases, 7,000 people got together and they all meditated together for a week. And then they looked at the crime statistics and the war statistics during that week and found that things like terrorist activity and the number of people who die and the number of violent actions around the world decreased by about 72%. So the only real rational explanation for this is, again, as I've said many times, think of your emotional body as being partially dependent on factors that are not within your control. So like as a classic example, if you're in a room and a very terrible smell comes into the room, let's say it's a smell of rotten eggs, a sulfurous, nasty smell like a rotten corpse. No matter how much you want to ignore that, there's no way you can ignore it, and it's going to affect your body. It's going to make you feel nauseous. It's going to make you feel like you want to leave the area, and if you can't leave the area and the smell doesn't go away, you're going to be very upset. Another simpler way to describe it in terms of energy is with another one of our 5 senses, in this case the sense of touch, and how it relates to temperature. If you have a room that gets unbearably hot, you're going to get very agitated, you're going to have emotional upheaval, you're going to be screaming, you're going to be banging on the windows, doing anything you can to try to get out of that room, but you can't. And it's going to make you agitated. If all of a sudden air conditioning was turned on, and you get this wonderful blast of alpine air that just cools everything down, you're going to immediately relax and feel better. Now, we know that when solar activity goes up, when the sun kicks out energy from solar flares, that there are certain things that have happened in the historical record, including the fact that there's much more war activity on the planet and that everybody sells out in the stock market and panics. Well, literally what's happening, as I just said, is the sun is cranking up the energy in the emotional body. It gets too hot, quote unquote, and then people freak out. They commit acts of violence, and they sell stock because they're paranoid and they're fearful that the stock is going to go down in price. Therefore, they sell to try to prevent against that, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So actually, economic indicators are one of the key ways in which you can spot whether the energy is going up or down. When the economy is going up, everybody's in a good mood. When the economy is going down, everyone's in a bad mood. And that can be energetically affected. So, you have to understand that when Woodstock happened in 1969, that's not a bunch of hippies running around drinking beer and smoking dope. I mean, that was part of it. But on a much greater level, it represented the fall of materialism. When Jimi Hendrix first lit his guitar on fire at the Monterey Pop Festival, in a very real sense, here he'd been doing more magical stuff on that guitar than anybody ever heard a guitarist play in the Western world before. Hendrix was really a guitar pioneer, right? So he burns his guitar. What does that say about this thing that he's playing? It shows that it's just a thing. It's like the fall of materialism. He's saying, hey, I can get another one. It doesn't matter. It's okay. And then in Woodstock, of course, it was basically a giant Vietnam War protest. So what you have is all these people unifying their minds, and these people who feel like they're on the fringes of society, that they don't belong, that they don't fit in anywhere. And then all of a sudden, there's millions of them all in the same spot. And it's like, wow, okay, we actually do exist. We actually are a substantial force in the world. And we actually can create change. I mean, I guess there weren't millions. There might have been hundreds of thousands. Probably not millions, but nonetheless.
I think that throughout the years, after the movie and all that, it touched millions.
Oh, no doubt. So you have to understand that when you look at the Maharishi effect, if it only takes 7,000 people coming together with a commonly shared vision of intent to really, really radically increase the harmony on the planet. I mean, 7,000 people are able to take 72% of the people that would fire a gun at you and make them not do it, because basically now they feel good and they don't feel like attacking you anymore. 72% fewer people die. 72% fewer car crashes because people are paying more attention on the road. They're not angry and they're not yelling at their wife on the cell phone. All these things happen because when enough people meditate on peace and love, even if they're high when they do it, by the way, even if they're using drugs, it doesn't matter because it's a consciousness effect, then you're going to have a substantial healing on the planet. So you can imagine how much my ears pricked up when I see Obama give this amazing speech in Cairo to the Muslim world. Now, there are innumerable problems with the alternative conspiracy media right now. The people that are reading Alex Jones and Jeff Rense and all these kind of websites are being exposed to an inordinate amount of propaganda that is being written by various sources within the Pentagon and the NSA. There is one project alone which is given over $500,000 of financing per year, and I would estimate that those efforts have gone way, way up. This is where, it's very transparent, because the closest that it ever comes in terms of mainstream media is what you're seeing with Fox. And these guys don't even have any game. If you want to appear objective to your audience, and you're really, basically this is a simple lesson of manipulation. And in order to become really aware of what's going on in the world, you have to understand manipulation so that you can avoid it happening to you. So it's important to know what skillful manipulators do so you don't get manipulated. Mm-hmm. And I've certainly had to learn this. So one of the things a skillful manipulator has to do is, if he or she, let's just use the gender he, if he wants to do something, if he wants to trick you in some way into doing or thinking something the way he wants you to think, he has to appear that it's impartial. In other words, if he's trying to sway you in one direction, then he's also going to have to say some things in the other direction so that he appears impartial. Well, what you're seeing with Fox News is literally a unilateral condemnation of every single thing that the administration does. They never once support anything that's going on whatsoever. And there was a big furor that came out this week because Obama called on a Huffington Post blogger journalist first at the press conference. And, of course, all the old guard mainstream media just went crazy about this, but this particular journalist on Huffington Post has done more work blogging about Iran than anybody else at this point. So the old media is really falling apart, and the administration is a part of this. And I still get, I would say, depending on the day, and especially if I write something or doing a show like this, I get a lot of well-meaning people who honestly think that they need to tell me that I'm full of shit and that I am selling out to the New World Order, that Obama is the Antichrist, or Obama is negative, or he's a puppet of the New World Order and whatnot. And what's happened is, again, you have very well-financed opposition that is working on a variety of levels, and in the Fox News system, what they're doing is they're putting it right out there on television. But then there's a lot of stuff that they can say when you go to a website that doesn't require any journalistic integrity. You can get away with a lot more stuff. And this is where they've concocted this whole mythology that he doesn't have a birth certificate, and where they've concocted a mythology that he is planning FEMA camps and martial law and all this ridiculous stuff that is in complete counterpoint to everything that he's presented about himself up until now. And that's why I say to people again, don't even waste your time with fear porn, because that's what it is. It's pornographic fear. You're literally reading this stuff that's getting you thinking that you're in jeopardy, that you're in danger, that the world is going to end, that something bad is going to happen to you unless you fight, fight, fight. And that's what they want. They meaning the loyal opposition on this planet. It's a frequency war, okay?
Sure.
The war is whether the planet is going to be in love or fear. The nice thing is that when even a small group of people are in love, it's a much more powerful energy field than fear. Fear basically represents the lack of energy. So you can have a lot of people that are in fear, but it doesn't really create anything as much as it just is. It's a vacuum. Then when love comes in, it can fill the vacuum, and it can have a vast effect in which all those people that have that vacuum get just a little taste of that energy, and it pumps them up, and they get more loving. That's why, again, if you have people who are not in a loving state and are in a fearful state, and they have that emptiness inside themselves, that emptiness is where violence and aggression comes from. The violence and aggression is that feeling of emptiness, that feeling of being isolated and abandoned and alone, which in turn leads to angry outbursts and that kind of behavior. So, to articulate this in a different way, you can look at the loyal opposition as having had something unprecedented happen. A candidate was actually running for president. They never thought he would win. He was the dark horse, 1 in a million shot. They didn't even spend that much time preparing for the likelihood that he would win. I was having a discussion with Richard Hoagland recently in which he was talking about a strange thing that happened when Bill Clinton was at that meeting that Obama called before his inauguration, after he won the election, in which all the old presidents got together in the Oval Office to talk, and ostensibly they were going to talk about what was going to happen, so that Obama could get a grip on what it would be like to be president, some of the things he would go through, and so forth. At the press conference, Bill Clinton looks down at the rug on the ground and says, "Boy, I really liked that rug." And for Richard, he thinks, okay, this is some sort of code, and what the heck does it mean? Why would he say that? And what kind of symbol is he sending out?
Boy, I really like that rug, he said?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. There's a tradition which most of us don't know if you haven't studied it, where each new president in the Oval Office has the ability to design, and actually that's the tradition, is that he designs his own carpet for the Oval Office and puts it in there. And that has a design that's unique to him, and you can check it out. And then for his duration of time as president, that's the rug that is there, and it has something he's familiar with, and it makes him feel like he's contributed in some way. Now, we all know that George W. is the 43rd president of the United States, but more importantly, the rug that George W. had created had 44 symbols on it, not 43, 44, which indicates the next president of the United States, not himself. Now, this means that George W. was keenly aware of the fact that he was a transitional president, and that once his term was done, that the more important president would come after him to finish the job, because that term leads up to what year? 2012. Exactly. So, we also know that during the same period of time that the 2000 elections were done and that George W. Stole the election, that Hillary Clinton ran for Senate and was a shoo-in, became Senator of New York. All along, it has been obvious as heck to anyone who's paying attention